This is a Main Hustle Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Jackie O and you're listening to Militantly Mixed.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
Grew up in this place full of small town graves, working all day to escape reality. I thought I was the one to be oppressed by none, as I belong to one and the other is my son. Yung kong may pantay, they say that I am just too white to be kong may. Yung kong may pantay, they say that I am just too white to be kong may. So where do I fit between the giver and the given? Do I have to be one or the other? How do I identify? Am I just another spy? Are they giving me a try? Experimental other. Knyong kong may pantay, they say that I am just too white to be kong may. Knyong kong may pantay, they say that I am just too white to be kong may. Your words hurt those that surround you, though you know nothing but your own boats on a stormy sea. Sometimes we're the ones that suffer from the guns you think should worse. Are they harmless words? They are not harmless words. Yung kong may pantay, they say that I am brown or white. Knyong kong may, and my knyong says that I am just right, because knyong kong may pantay, they say that I am just too white to be kong may. Knyong kong may pantay, they say that I am just too white to be kong may. To be kong may.
Hey y'all, welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Charmaine, aka Mixed Girl Maine, the busiest mixed race, bisexual, polyamorous, atheist, comic book nerd, cat mom podcaster in this podcasting game. And I am back. It's still a rough time, but I'm getting things together bit by bit. Hopefully I can get back to a normal schedule soon. But as y'all know, it's been a rough couple of months. Um, and I'm back into grieving again, and I'm trying to keep my head up and act normal. But dang, every time I try to turn a corner, something happens, and I'm trying to keep my spirits up, but it's tough. It is tough. But I don't want to dwell on anything. I do have an update on the computer situation. I have turned it in, hopefully, to try to get a trade-in value. It takes about 3 weeks to find out if anything is salvageable, and they'll give me hopefully a credit back, which I can add to what y'all have donated so far, so I can replace my laptop hopefully sooner rather than later. It's still possible it won't be salvageable at all and I won't get anything, in which case I will continue to just have to save. But what I did do was I went out and got myself a little iPad so that I can do some of this work remotely. When I was traveling the last 2 weeks, I didn't have a laptop with me, and it was really hard to get any work done on my downtime. And since I was traveling, there were times when I just didn't have anything to do, and it would have been nice to be able to edit a show or do some show art or do some social media work. And I was going to get one anyway before I destroyed my laptop so that I could use it as a soundboard so I can kind of change some of the things that I do on the show. So at least I have it now for when I get my laptop. But in the meantime, at least it's something I can travel with. And it's actually really useful for a lot of the work that I have to do. The only thing I can't really do on it is edit. And that is because I use a specific software that I've paid for separately. I don't use any of the free softwares for editing because I don't really like their interfaces. But what I use is Adobe Audition. It's not cheap. I pay for it, or at least with y'all's support, I pay for it. My Patreon sponsors. And so that's why I'm going to continue to edit on my old ass iMac, but I'll be able to get a lot of the other stuff done with my iMac or with my iPad when I'm not at home. So that's all positive. And hopefully I will be able to get that laptop soon so I can do my full functionality again on a more modern system. All right, I have a really great interview today, and I don't want to cut any of it short. So it's about a 52-minute one, and I know my episodes are usually about an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to have to race through some of these announcements for this intro and also include the song that you just heard and a song hopefully at the end if I have enough time. And so here we go. I just don't want the episode to be like an hour and a half or an hour and 45 because I know that y'all kind of stop listening after that amount of time. So, but before we begin, I do want to acknowledge that Militantly Mixed is recorded on the ancestral lands of the Chumash and the Tongva people, and I am currently residing in West LA. My guest this week was calling in also from the ancestral lands of the Chumash people, but also and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Shumuwich and the Barbaranos people. I am going to begin incorporating this into the show. I've done it before, but I don't want it to drop off as a habit because I do think it is important to acknowledge the stolen lands from the indigenous people here where I reside and record the show from. And if my guests are on ancestral lands, I will acknowledge that as well. It's just something that I've witnessed recently in events and on other shows and in books that I've read and things like that. I do believe it has value to acknowledge the past and make people think about it because we easily don't think about what happened before we got here. So I'd like to incorporate that in the show going forward. I hope y'all appreciate that as well. So the song you heard at the top of the show was by my guest today, Tiffany Lytle. She is a Cambodian American singer, songwriter, and educator of Asian American studies. She is trained in Cambodian classical dance as well as other dance styles, and her debut EP is called Cambodian Child, and you just heard the track, and I wrote myself out a pronunciation key, so Tiffany, I hope I said this correctly. I listened to it over and over again to try to get it right. Kiom Ko Khmer, and it translates into I am a Cambodian child. And as you heard, it is about her mixed race experience as a multiracial Cambodian and American person. And this was such a great interview. We were introduced to each other from a mutual friend, and I just think Tiffany is amazing. I really do hope to have her back because we got so caught up on some of the other topics that we had to talk about that we never even got around to her music. I'm just sharing her music because I want to. And hopefully when I get her back, we can actually talk about how she uses her music to investigate her heritage and share her mixed race heritage with people. But we didn't quite get into that on this interview because we had so many other things to talk about. Tiffany is an amazing guest, and I do hope you check out the show notes after you listening to the show so you can follow her on her Instagram, get her EP, support mixed race people out there doing things. Yes, I hope all that happens. Got a bit of a hit, lost a big chunk of the Patreon sponsorship, and part of that I'm sure has to do with the slowing down of the schedule and not being able to deliver at my normal pace, which I apologize for. I do have some rewards that I'm a little bit behind in getting out. I'm still waiting for some people to get back to me on their t-shirt sizes so that I can send them their t-shirts. But I got some pins for some of y'all and some handwritten postcards coming your way. I am little bit behind on that. And I'm supposed to also update some of the rewards, but I've been behind on that as well. So we did take a bit of a hit. So I do still want to try to hit that $500 a month. But at this point, we got to go back to trying to hit the $300 a month. And if you can or are interested in supporting the show, you can go to patreon.com/militantlymixed. And you can sponsor as low as $1 to as high as anything you wish. There's different reward levels depending on where you sponsor, or you can just sponsor without rewards. It's entirely up to you. And that is a monthly sponsorship. If you don't wish or cannot sponsor on a monthly basis, but you do want to contribute to the show, you can go to paypal.me/militantlymix and sponsor the show that way. All of the money goes into the same Militantly Mixed bank account and goes back into the show. That covers my editing software. It covers, well, soon, hopefully, it'll cover my replacement computer, my website, hosting fees, email, things like that. It also helps with the swag that is available for sale or for conventions. And it when there is a little bit extra, I put that into advertising the show to try to get more ears on it. So if you want to support the show, two ways, patreon.com and PayPal. Or you can go to our shop on Etsy. All of these links are in the show notes. Etsy is where you can buy the pins, the stickers, and the buttons. I think I should add the postcards on there soon. I haven't done that, but I think I will. And if you want the t-shirts, you can go to teespring.com and just search for Militantly Mix, and all of the t-shirts are there as well. And all of the proceeds that come from those purchases go back into the show. Okay, so that's that. I feel like there was something else major. Oh, there is something else major. I talked about it last week, but I just want, and I'll talk about it every week until it happens. I will be speaking at the Mixed Race Heritage Conference at UCLA on May 2nd. The schedule will come out a little bit later. When more details come out, I will share that and post that on social media as well. But if you're going to be in the Los Angeles area, please consider coming to the Mixed Race Heritage Conference at UCLA. It is on May 2nd, which is also free comic book day. So in the morning, I will be at the Pulp Fiction Comics, the store that I work at part-time, handling the huge international event, which is Free Comic Books Day. And then halfway through that event, I'm going to hit the pause button, leave, and get myself ready to go present at the Mixed Race Heritage Conference. It's going to be a huge, gigantic day for me. And both things are things I'm very excited about. So I do hope that if you are able to come out and support all of the speakers that will be at the Mixed Race Heritage Conference at UCLA, that you can, but also come out and support your girl. I have not gotten permission for this yet, so I'm not going to mention it. But when I was at an event last week, a listener swung by to say hi to me just because they listened to the show and heard me announce that I was going to be at this particular event. And I was so overwhelmed and freaking out and trying to act like I was cool, but really I was like freaking out inside that someone drove to come and see me at an event. I was just like, I don't even know how that's possible. It's amazing. But I haven't asked permission to share the photo or anything yet, so I'm not going to out the person, but I'm so appreciative that that happened. It made me feel all kind of special. My co-host on the other show was like pitching me like, you got a listener come and see you and stuff. So it was great and awesome. And I hope that in any of my future events, if you are able to come out and see me and meet me, I want to meet you. And I will say that it was awesome. It was awesome to have that experience. So, given how difficult things have been for me lately too, to have a boost like that was really meaningful. So, you know who you are. I'm sure you're hearing me be a goober, but I appreciate you, and hopefully I can share that picture with y'all soon too. All right, I think that's enough. Man, things have been tough. This has been a tough couple months, but I have had these little rays of sunshine, so I'm very appreciative of y'all, the continued messages, the really thoughtful messages. Like, I feel like you must have really been getting to know me over the course of this show, because some of y'all have sent me messages that are like you really understand me. Some people are saying, take a break. You sound like everything's pretty heavy for you. Take a break. We'll still be here. And then I have other people that are just like, if doing the show is how you get your medicine, keep doing the show, but slow down, a little bit so that you can take a breath, but we'll be here for you either way. So it feels like, y'all understand my mental health needs and the way I process things. And it's really meaningful. Whew, it's really meaningful to me that you all do show that you care that way. So thank you, everybody, for sticking with me and being supportive of all my things. I guess all of my things, and this show. But before we go too long, because I could talk for hours, I would like to move it on over to my guest this week. Again, Tiffany Lytle. You're just going to love this interview, this discussion. It was so wonderful. I can't wait to have her back. I can't wait to have her back and get into her music a little bit more as well. But please join me in welcoming Tiffany Lytle to the Militantly Mixed family. All right. So we are back, and this is, I guess, kind of take two, because we were supposed to talk last week and my travel situation was all janky. But I'm very excited to have you join the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell them
Awesome.
why we're
Thanks, Charmaine.
here?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Tiffany Lytle, and I am a mixed race Cambodian American and white academic and recording artist and singer. And I was a professional dancer too in my past. So I think performing artist kind of covers the gamut for me. And a lot of my work is scholarly informed because I am currently working on my PhD in theater, dance, and performance studies at UC Santa Barbara. And I did my master's in Asian American studies at UCLA. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited that we get the chance to talk. And the reason why we even get connected is because of one of my, and Morgan, forgive me for saying it this way, one of my favorite white women.
Yep.
So, my friend Morgan.
She knows.
She knows. She knows. My friend Morgan, we worked together a few years back on a very notable competition cooking show. We were both in the production office for this show, and bonded over that time period, and have stayed in touch and everything like that. And every now and then we'll reach out and talk to each other about whatever kind of things are going on. And a couple times in the last year or so, she's reached out to me saying, like, I know what you're doing with your show and everything. Can we talk a little bit about this issue and that issue and stuff? And then she hooked us up because she's like, why don't you two know each other? And I'm glad that
Yeah.
we're pretty much in line on a lot of things. Why don't we talk a little bit about what's happening for the grad students right now, UC wide, I guess?
Yeah, so UC wide, and I'm going to speak from what's happening on my campus at UC Santa Barbara. UC wide, the TAs, the teaching, the graduate students who are teaching assistants, we are on a full strike. And this strike is in solidarity with UC Santa Cruz students who have been striking for living wages since last quarter, and they have been met with a lot of brutality, both from the administration and from police. And so, in solidarity with them, we've all gone on strike. And not only are we striking in solidarity with UC Santa Cruz to protest the egregious conditions that not only they have to work in, but that they, as protesters who are exercising their right to speak, have been and to free speech, have been they've been met with so much violence and so much problematic institutionalized hate that we're all rising up in solidarity. But we're also fighting for our own cost of living adjustment. So COLA is going to be the slang that everyone hears left and right about, this strike. And COLA just stands for cost of living adjustment. I can speak to my own situation. I live in Santa Barbara, where I have to go to school. Prior to this, I was an adjunct lecturer at UC Santa Barbara, and I commuted from Los Angeles, which
Ooh.
is a 98-mile drive one way. That's one way. And, living in LA in a great situation where I was rent controlled, but I worked 4 jobs to get through my master's program and just to live. Generally, I had to take this job to commute up to Santa Barbara because it was one of the few opportunities that I would have to work in the field that I am training for and that I'm trained for. Not only that, but I heard such great things about the faculty and the student body that I really wanted to make sure that my voice was a part of that as well. And in my time here, I decided to apply to a PhD program, and I got in at UC Santa Barbara, and that's why I relocated. What I didn't know was that while I was shopping, I found out that studio apartments go for $2,000.
Yeah.
And if you want a 1-bedroom, it's going to be more than that. And if you want to share a room, you can do that. But as someone that's almost 30 years old, I think that's a little bit ridiculous. And I got very lucky. My apartment's wonderful, and I am one of the very few lucky people that built relationships in order to find good places here. And I could only do that because I was teaching up here for a while. So I was commuting and meeting people and seeing places actively for 6 months.
Right.
And then I found this awesome place, but it's still $1,700 a month with no utilities included.
Oof.
Yeah, and I'm paid $2,100 a month.
See, that's the thing. So my husband is an adjunct professor, and the thing is, he went through to get his PhD, but burnt out after 6 years, and so he got out with his master's. He basically should have gotten out with 3 masters, but he got out with 2 masters. So he's been an adjunct for the last basically 10 years, and we go from place to place. We lived in Austin, Texas, and Bridgewater, Massachusetts, and Porterville, California, and then we ended up here. He was teaching at Santa Monica, and he hasn't been let go, but he hasn't been giving classes this semester. And
right,
no one has health insurance, and nobody, there's all these problems that they have, and then they're expected to work full or more than full time or join committees so that they can network enough to get considered for a full time. And at the end of the day, that doesn't happen. It just
the adjunct hustle is not for the faint of heart.
It's not, because you're highly educated, lower paid than people who can come out of high school and get a trade job and work in the career. They'll be higher paid. So my husband and I are 2 people with master's degrees that I ended up working in tech and in executive positions instead of film, because I wasn't making any money in film and he wasn't making any money as an adjunct. And so I'm the one who took the hit, to not follow my dreams.
Yeah.
So he's following his dreams, but on an adjunct rotation. And that's there's a lot less control of your career and what you get to do. And then on top of it, if you're not even able to live, which is what we're facing here in LA as well. But what I was really upset about in hearing about what's going on with the UC-wide protests is it starting in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is where I got my bachelor's. and I will refer to this as Angela Davis's UC Santa Cruz. How the hell are they the ones who started
Mhm.
treating people so poorly and sicking the police on them? And this is Santa Cruz. Like, if you're not familiar with California, or you're not familiar with Santa Cruz in particular, listeners, Santa Cruz is where all the old hippies from the 60s who ended up getting rich later in life moved to be able to be half hippie still, but rich. Like, it's the richer hippie place. And because
Yeah.
and so for them to be the people who are now like,
Well, it shows you this neoliberal mindset of the administration in the academy,
mhm,
and I think that we need to, as as academics, we need to be aware of this neoliberal mindset, and we need to rise up against it, because it does go against a lot of the things that we're attempting to uncover as scholars, right?
mhm,
Especially as scholars in the humanities or whatever else. But my thing is, a lot of us are going to pursue these higher degrees because we hope that our research can help change the world.
right.
So my focus is on Cambodian American communities and performance. And I'm hoping that through highlighting different Cambodian American performers, and through talking about the stories of the Cambodian American community, and through creating performance as well, that I'm able to bridge these kinds of gaps of knowledge that
Mhm,
happen in the American consciousness about people of color, especially for me, being Southeast Asian. I never saw any representation of any kind
mm-mm.
in the media, and the only representation in performance that I ever saw was Cambodians performing Cambodian classical dance or Cambodian court dance. And
Oh, you did
so
get to see that growing up?
I saw it through like community performances. This like image of the Apsara, which is a Cambodian like celestial dancer. That image is very closely linked to Cambodian diasporic identity,
Okay.
especially post the 1975 to 1979 genocide.
Mhm,
So when diasporic communities came to the US, this image becomes extremely important in connecting Cambodians abroad to ideas and memories of homeland,
mhm,
right? So performance thus becomes extremely important in Cambodian American communities that are trying to, after being displaced violently, trying to find identity.
mhm,
And so I saw this image and I thought, wow, I should do Cambodian classical dance, and it wasn't exactly like that. It was, my discovery of Cambodian classical dance was something that happened with my parents kind of by chance. But
mm,
when I saw these representations, like it definitely helped fuel like why I was performing and why I did Cambodian classical dance. I was like, oh, see, the Apsara is synonymous with Cambodian culture.
mhm.
So I need to be like that.
And
Right.
any of us that are mixed race and needing to have some form of access to our cultures just so that we can feel like a valid member of the community, dance, food, language, these are kind of the probably easier access things that we can get here in the States as long as there's a community present.
Right. And I was very lucky to have grown up, right next to the one of the largest Cambodian American communities in the United States. I grew up in San Pedro, California, which is just over the bridge from Long Beach, California.
Which
And
is
I
where I'm
spent
from.
Yeah, exactly. And I spent most of my, weekends, the entire weekends, hours and hours in Long Beach. So I consider that to be like my second home.
Right.
And like you look left and right, and there's these in every Cambodian American household, there's two paintings, one of the Apsara
Mm-hmm.
and then one of like Angkor Wat. Or
Mm.
maybe the Cambodian countryside if you're, if you're lucky and you got
Really.
space on the wall. And they're all like huge and super colorful. But everybody's always got these images, circulating. So for
Mm.
me, that meant like doing Cambodian classical dance was the was how I needed to perform identity. And being a white passing or at least non-Cambodian passing person, I felt a really, really huge obligation to get good at Cambodian classical
Right.
dance or to continue practicing it. And I think it's that representation and its linkage to Cambodian and Cambodian American identity, paired with knowing the stories of my mother's trials and tribulations through the Cambodian genocide,
Mm.
that made me continue to pursue performance and Cambodian classical dance specifically, through my 20s.
Right. Let's go back real fast to talk about you said as a white presenting and or non necessarily obviously Cambodian presenting mixed woman. This is something that fascinates me, and people will see a photo so they'll get a chance to check it out, where I see someone who's clearly of Asian descent, and I'm going to assume mixed Asian descent, and then it's a question of finding out or in conversation if it becomes obvious or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your case, though, are perceived. Are you perceived as white, non-white? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
can't figure out what you
So,
are, so you're kind of
I
white.
mean, I grew up in, in LA, right? So
Mm,
the first thing people jump to is that I'm Mexican.
mhm.
Um, but I'm perceived all kinds of things all the time. I, as a child, would be on stage during Khmer New Year doing Cambodian classical dance, and like 5 feet away would be the audience, and you'd hear some grandma yelling really loud for some reason. She'd be like, "What is that Mexican girl doing on stage?"
Oh no.
Right? And she'd say it in Khmer, like, I don't understand it, right? Or they'd ask, like, who's that American girl? And American is like slang for white,
Yes.
you know? So they'd be like, Gonagang, like, what is she doing on stage? This American girl. They just mean this white girl. What is she
Right.
doing? And they'd ask in Khmer, like, why is it that she can dance so well?
Interesting.
And so from a young age, I was confronted with my difference,
Mm.
because I participated in Cambodian classical dance. And so my whole life, I feel like I've just faced many, many, many authenticity checks.
Mhm. Oh, that's a good way of saying it. Authenticity
Yeah.
checks. I might
Oh,
say
I get authenticity checked.
that.
Yeah, no, please use it. I get authenticity checked to today,
Yeah.
like constantly, right? I was wearing my Raised by Refugees shirt
Mhm.
in on campus once, and somebody stopped me and was like, "Wait, what are you?"
Of course. Which refugees? Could you clarify which refugees, please?
Like, I teach in the Asian American Studies department, and I do have to say, like, generally the students are really lovely, but I feel the obligation to start off, and this is Hapa people problems. You're
Right.
familiar with the term Hapa?
Yeah.
Still, I've always felt the need to tell my students right off the bat that I am Asian American identifying and
Right.
that I am Cambodian American. And I feel like it's a Hapa person problem. Like, I'm constantly having to feel like I either need to assert my Cambodianness in
Mm.
ways that maybe don't always feel fully genuine, but at the same time I have this need to let people know, like, hey, don't pull your white people shenanigans out. There's a person of
Right.
color in your presence.
Yeah, so the Hapa thing is weird, I think, to me because I forever identified it with so I was born in 77. So I grew up going to Hawaii in the 80s, where hapa was mostly used for like maybe a Hawaiian and Japanese mixed person. And then you
Mhm.
had your hapa haoles, that's when you can
Mhm.
say some kind of Asian and white or whatever. So now that the term has been taken off a little bit more, and I think it's pretty present here in California. I know it's
Yes.
also used a lot in Canada um, as well. And I just think that it's one of those things of where, like, I guess it's also about the term Asian, because I don't often use the term Asian unless I am around other Asians that aren't Japanese. I'll
Mhm.
usually declare my Japaneseness so that they can tell me that I'm not Japanese and I have to deal with my authenticity check.
Yeah.
Um, and Asians are weird. Like, we do tend to other ourselves. We do it quite a lot. And so the fact that this term even exists and even is used, where there was a patch of Asians somewhere who decided to acknowledge Asian otherness, I'm
Well,
really
I
curious
mean,
how this
so
ends up being
thinking about that term in the context of Hawaii, we definitely have to highlight and bring up all of the different waves of immigration and of imperialism and of empire that have touched those shores.
right.
And so that's why, the distinctions there are maybe different than how we use it here in the States, as this kind of like, I personally use it as almost an all encapsulating term for mixed race generally, and that's
Okay.
only because I'm looking for a kind of slang that's kind of catchy that unites us all, right? But
That
most
isn't
people,
like used for animals or like mud,
exactly,
or
that's not
those
used
types of
in,
things.
yeah. But also, you know Hoppa's used here in the States per, if you check out the Hoppa Project by Kip Fulbeck,
Mhm.
which is this incredible like photography project that asks the people that he's photographing, like, what is Hoppa? And then, they'll write their own answer, and then their written answer is juxtaposed to their portrait. And that project has some academic text and writing within the book that talks about this kind of reclamation of the term, because it was a derogatory term. And it,
Right.
it talks about that and how that's being used to describe more of Asian descent and other.
Hmm.
And I kind of like casually use it a lot to describe just mixed race people generally.
Generally.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting way of thinking about it, because I am also because of the time period I'm born. I am now, as a middle-aged 42-year-old woman, I am now being confronted with words that were used as derogatory now being
Yeah.
reclaimed, and so Hapa being one of them. So yeah, I do kind of think of it as a negative, but I've been embracing it because I know my people have been embracing it. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get used to this.
Right. But we have
Queer,
to know why we're embracing it too.
right.
Like, we have to know the history of it before we can use it. And that's why I really, really advocate and believe in people getting more education about these kinds of histories of multiraciality. And we need more of this scholarship in academia generally,
Mm.
but we also need more of these stories out and these histories out in the general, consciousness of Asian America.
Right, because there is sometimes, in a lot of cases, there is trauma in mixedness, especially when we come from countries that have been colonialized or multiple conquerings. Like a lot of South Asia, there has been other Asian oppressors, there have been white oppressors, other European oppressors. There's this
Yeah.
constant throughout all of Asia, but particularly South Asia, Southeast Asia. There is this flux of the Dutch, and then the Spaniards, and then
Yeah.
the British, and
Right. And on
and
the
the
flip side
Japanese
of,
did it too. They went through all of the countries and decided to
right.
conquer too.
I
Okay.
mean, imperialism is definitely rampant, but also on the flip side of that, you know, I teach an upper division Asian American pop culture class, and so when I get to my like section where I'm thinking about mixed race performers, you know, I also want to point out that mixed race people have always been projected in pop culture to be these like hopeless trauma ridden characters,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to point out too that not everybody is, you know, an Amerasian, you know, not
Right.
everybody is a child of war or of that's not everybody that's mixed race is a child of war and of these oppressive, you know, circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really important that we highlight that people like my parents, you know, you know, did not meet in Cambodia where my dad brought back a Cambodian bride,
Right.
right? My dad is never in the military. He's not like that. He hates that stuff. I'm so sick of getting asked if my father was in the military and is that why I was born? Like I'm sick of getting asked that question.
Right. And
Um
so that's my family's experience, is that
yeah,
all my Japanese aunts and grandma and everything were a product of those kinds of marriages. So it is interesting because we could be mixed almost exactly the same way, but the circumstances be different and our access to
exactly.
things be different. And yet we're just looking for tribe in any way, shape, or form. And so sometimes we put our thing on the other mixed people that we're surrounded around.
Which is why I think mixed race studies is something that I'm excited to see continuing to grow, because we all need to share our stories in whatever, you know, ways those stories have panned out in our lives. Like we've had no control over those stories, right? But we can still come together even though our stories are different on this kind of idea that we've all been misinterpreted based on what we look like.
Right.
And it's such a strange, you know, like it's such a strange experience. But I think, you know, mixed folks and folks of color that may or may not be mixed can definitely relate about being judged based on what you look like.
Right. So did you choose to go the academic route through perform like you were already a performer and you already had access to that, but did you decide to go down the academic path as another way of connecting to culture or as a way of learning how to inform others?
You know, my path to academia was very, very long and convoluted. Like I straight up leaving high school was like, I want to be a sports medicine doctor.
Okay.
I wanted to be a physician. I had all these dreams. And then I got to college and, you know, it hit me that I wasn't actually as well prepared to be in that cutthroat institution, in that cutthroat major,
Mm,
like I thought I would be, because
mm,
I worked really hard in high school and did pretty well. Um, Turns out like all of the kinds of things that hold students back definitely held me back as
okay.
well. Like I was not immune to any of that stuff, even though I did well in high school and like worked really hard, right? So,
Mm,
you know, that model minority myth thing like totally came crashing down. Definitely was not a model minority in college. I went into academia because I was so lost. I had already, you know, worked in the industry as a dancer in this really amazing dance company called KPA Fusion. I had already been doing Cambodian classical dance my entire life since like the age of 5 or 6, you know.
mhm,
And then I never fit in anywhere, even though I could physically do the job well, even though I
mhm,
could dance well, even though my technique was on point. I never looked the right part for anything.
right.
So I realized that having a career as a dancer and like fulfilling some sort of dream of doing performance also was, plus the med school stuff, that wasn't going to work out. Like none of it
Mhm,
was working out. So I I was already at UCLA and I was finishing my degree, which I had taken some time off in between. And then I had gone back to school. So I was a little bit older and I built relationships with some professors that I did well in their classes and I kind of liked them. They were super nice. And, you know, one of my professors, Tu Hong Nguyen Vo, who's at UCLA in the Asian American Studies department, she and I talked because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And she, advised me to check out the Asian American Studies department's master's program.
Mm.
And she really encouraged like my creative work. And also she encouraged me telling my family story,
Okay.
which I had never ever been encouraged to do any of those things before. So I kind of went into academia as like a way of trying to figure out what I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do next,
Mm.
which I think is what a lot of people did. And I
Yeah.
got so lucky that everything that I had been doing in my life up until that point lined up. And
Right.
that this particular program not only allowed me to engage in scholarship in a new way, but it also valued my live experience and it valued the creative work that I'd been doing professionally up until then. And so I didn't enter academia thinking that I was going to care about teaching or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but it was after going through that master's program, probably like within my first year, I was already just like, I love this. This is so challenging, but the things that we're learning are blowing my mind.
Mm.
The things that we learn in ethnic studies about our histories and about oppression and about power and how all that functions.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew that I needed to figure out ways to continue talking about these topics.
Right.
So that's why I'm still here. And when I ended up finishing my undergrad major in was Southeast Asian studies, I feel like I got about 10 minutes of lecture on Cambodia, and my major was Southeast Asian studies. So
Huh.
that was when I knew I needed to at least get my family's story out there, and I needed to study more about this field, about this
Right.
country, and about Cambodian Americans. Like, I never saw myself represented in academia, and I really believed at the time that if I could get us represented a little bit in academia, lots of change could happen from there.
Right.
Um, and I still do believe that, but I didn't set
Well,
out
you're gonna
trying.
have an impact. Like someone's gonna see you and go, "Oh, we can do this. Like we can do this." I mean, I think that's been the thing for me is growing up watching. In my wildest dreams, hoping to see like a black, white, Japanese kid or family or something like that on TV. Like even now, I'm not holding my breath waiting for that unless I create it, right?
Hmm.
But seeing any kind of mixedness usually helped. Like if it was a black and white biracial kid and the family has interracial parents and stuff like that, I would be like, oh, there I am, kind of. Like those
Yeah.
types of things make a difference. And then if you actually put that into places like professors or singers or performers and things like that, and someone says, oh, all they did was do it. I could do
Yeah.
this too.
Like, who was the first mixed race person you ever saw on TV
Where I could
that
acknowledge
you remember,
that I
and you
remember.
could be like, that's a mixed race person?
You know what? Like I don't know that I've never been able to answer that question. I can tell you when I
Yeah.
felt presented, or where I thought I was finding it was like the first. I do know. It was, gosh, it was the Jeffersons, and it wasn't because of the kid. It was because the interracial couple, because
Mm.
Lenny Kravitz's mom was on the show, and she had a white husband, and George would make fun of them being interracial couple and make fun of the white husband all the time. And that was like, even though it was the reverse of the way my family was, because like my dad's black and my dad was half black, half Caucasian British, and my mom is half Japanese, half German, Irish, Appalachian people, right? So like it was a different mix, a different version of my mix, but it was still like, oh, this must happen somewhere. Like it's not just my family,
Right.
I think.
Right. It's not
Um,
just you.
But I know that like more so as an adult, if I see a mixed kid or something on TV, even if they're meant to code as monoracial black or monoracial Asian or
Yeah.
something like that, which happens all the time. I'll be like, look at that little mixed kid, and it's gotten so much to the point that, like my husband, who is also mixed but did not grow up identifying as mixed because nobody told him.
Mm.
Now he's starting to pick up on it, and because he's had 20 years of me yelling at the TV, look at that little mixed girl, or
Yeah. Like,
I
woo,
mean,
there
even
they are.
I'm trying to think, like,
I
when
mean, go ahead.
I'm just trying to figure out, like I think most of it happened as an adult, like seeing Naomi Osaka, like with her
Yeah.
black and Japanese face, and I'm like, she's
Yeah.
just darker than me, but we're the same, like
Yeah.
that. Like I'm a full grown ass woman and older than these people that are popping up on TV, and
Yeah.
I'm finally feeling represented in that way. So yeah, I think it
I
happens
mean,
as
I
an
get that. I mean, I definitely knew my mixedness.
Mhm.
If that's a word. I knew my mixedness from, a very, very young age, because there was no Cambodian mom that was not about to point out how, light I was, or how I didn't look Cambodian. And sometimes it was for like problematic, competitive, whatever reasons, right? But then I look on TV and I see other like mixed white Asian actors playing like white actors, and
Mhm.
I'm so confused. Like, I
What
remember
am I
Kristen
supposed to
Kruk.
be?
Yeah, remember Kristen Kruk from like from Smallville?
Oh yes, yes, yeah. Okay, I was trying
So
to figure
I
out.
looked at her and I was like, she's Hapa, like she's
Yeah,
mixed, right?
100%. A
But she's
100%.
playing like a white girl.
The most frustrating part of that is seeing two white parents pop up, and you're like, "But is she adopted? Can we address this?"
Right. And it never gets addressed
Right.
because she was white passing enough, But for me, knowing that the actress was definitely mixed meant that I could someday perform roles. Because even when I was in middle school and we were doing plays and stuff, I always thought that it was either my chubbiness or my mixedness that didn't land me starring roles
Okay.
in plays and stuff, because I was often called back for multiple parts, and I'd hear from judges that probably shouldn't have been talking to me about this, that they thought that that they tried to fight for me in the casting because they felt that I was the perfect, person for that part. But politics aside, it, because there was probably some stuff about like, can your parents come help? And I've, two parents at work, um, or can they pay for things? And I was like, no. But
Mhm.
politics aside, it made it always, because I never got cast in leading roles, I always was left to wonder if it was like my race or if it was because I was chubby.
Mm.
So I either thought I was fat and I was sad and messed up because of that, or I thought I was like this weird, abject, mixed race, nobody could cast me in anything, like, person. And it was like super traumatic growing up.
Right.
And so that's where I think a lot of the trauma is for mixed race folks, is this need by American society and by the world generally to categorize people,
Mhm.
racially in the very like few categories that um we have.
Right.
And this failure to account for and care about mixed stories, and this failure to consider those stories like normal and not part of like, this
Mhm.
really messed up militarized experience.
Right. Can I ask for the Cambodian side? You know how most cultures around the world have a version of colorism for their
Yep.
particular groups, right?
Yep.
For Japan, they do skin whiteners and everything as well and all that kind of stuff, and they do shun the darker skinned Japanese. But Southeast Asians do tend to be darker skin. Is there the same type of thing, a dynamic of value for the lighter skinned Cambodian?
Yeah, I think the question's very complicated actually in the
Yeah.
Cambodian community because of what happened in the Cambodian genocide.
Mm-hmm.
So, people that were lighter skinned were often affluent
Mm-hmm.
or didn't have to work in the fields or were mixed Chinese or were ethnically Chinese, culturally Cambodian, right? And
Mm-hmm.
all of those kinds of people were targeted in the genocide. So we don't necessarily in the diaspora see this like um preference for light
Okay.
skinned, but also while I say that we don't necessarily see that, I have definitely seen it in my personal experience. Like I
Okay.
know my aunt used to use bleaching cream for
Mm-hmm.
her skin, and like, lighter skinned Cambodians are often kind of cast at, in dance pieces. Like if you go on YouTube and look up Cambodian classical dance, a lot of the dancers you see are light skinned or fair,
Mm-hmm.
you know um and the idea is the same in the Cambodian community. Is if you're darker skinned, you must be of a lower socioeconomic class.
Right.
um and that's definitely something to consider in the to be similar in the Cambodian American diaspora.
And then how does that
So,
translate to the Cambodian mixed folks, especially any of those that were
it's the Cambodian mixed race population is few. It's very few.
okay.
But it's growing. So there's a lot. Like I was the only mixed race dancer until my sister joined the dance group. And then my cousins who are also mixed race,
Hmm.
their mom is Cambodian, not related to my mom. We're related on our white side.
Oh, okay.
So we were like the first like mixed half white, half Cambodian kids.
Okay.
And then there, like another friend of mine, my friend Monica, she's half Filipino, half Cambodian. But she presents Asian. So it's a slightly different experience, but still totally like I'm super curious about her experiences actually. Um
Bring her on.
I know, right? She's awesome. But yeah, like I think that there aren't a ton of us,
Okay.
and there's only a handful that are my age that I know about.
Mm.
And two of them are artists, and they're really incredible artists, which is exciting.
Hmm.
Um, but those are the only mixed race people that I know that are around my age.
I guess I always kind of thought, because I did grow up in Long Beach. There was Cambodian community, a lot of various Southeast Asian communities, but the ones that were mixed tended to be like mixed back home, like French colonization mixed,
Yeah.
both for Cambodians and for Vietnamese and things like that. So I guess I was always kind of picturing that there was just this cast of mixed French Cambodian folks and like trying to figure out how the Cambodian world viewed them, but they would be being viewed under colonization anyway. So
Hmm. Well, if we're being viewed in any way, I look, I haven't met a ton of other mixed race people. You know what I mean? And
I
that's
mean,
kind of
it's
the
the
crazy
story of
thing is
most of
that
the people.
there's not a community for it. Like I had my sister, and we don't really talk about this stuff that much, but
Same with my brother.
um yeah, but we definitely were the only people we knew that were mixed Cambodian.
Mm,
And like for us for me at least it's a big point of pride. Like I feel like it's a privilege to be Cambodian because I know my mom's history, and I know like a lot of her stories
mm,
about what she went through. And so it's an honor that not only did she survive this really
Right.
horrendous period in Cambodian history, but she came and was able to work really hard to make something of herself and then to choose to build a family.
Right.
So my experience has been very privileged in that she shared those stories with me and that she is who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been very lucky. That being said, um, we don't get to interact with the Cambodian mixed race community because there really isn't one.
Mm.
Like, we're not a community.
I mean, I think that's a fair assessment of almost every mixed community. I mean, I grew up knowing a lot of mixed people because almost everybody in my family was mixed, and then we also were a military family. So we
Yeah.
were always surrounded by other mixed folks from all over the place, and we just all kind of like, well, we're all kind of the same brown, and we could be Asian, we could be black, we could be Latinx, like we just didn't know, but we ran around each other. So I did grow up with a pretty rich mixed experience, and growing up and doing this show and realizing how so many mixed race people actually grow up in isolation. Like, I managed to grow up with mixed folks and be isolated because we weren't allowed to talk about this kind of stuff.
Mm.
And now I'm meeting all kinds of people who grew up being sort of the one or only or just them and their sibling, and don't even get to talk about it. And like you said just a few minutes ago, I have now heard this same sentence 3 times this week. I think it's something to the effect of, I think you're the first mixed person I've ever had a conversation with, or I don't get to talk with that many mixed people. I'm not sure that I've met one. Like
Yeah.
something like that seems to be
Yeah.
really common.
And I talk to a lot of mixed people, but mixed Cambodian is a special brand that's
Right.
been very few and far between. Being in academia and being in ethnic studies, I've definitely met some incredible scholars that are working on these issues of multiraciality. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so exciting to see what they're doing for their own communities and for their own stories. And so I hope to just be able to kind of do the same through my research and through my creative work for mixed Cambodian Americans, because I know
Yeah.
that there's a ton of mixed kids out there right now that are doing the same things that I did when I was their age, doing Cambodian classical dance and feeling out of place, but feeling like they want to and need to do kind of this kind of cultural production work, you
Right.
know. So
I appreciate the way that you say that too, because I mean, I get the whole thing of like, why are mixed people so militant, which is how I end up with the name of my show and things like that. And for me, growing up in the Black community and presenting as a sort of ambiguous Asian Latinx looking person, but being Black as hell, I had to be militant. I had to be more
yeah,
militant than the darkest dark skinned person, because I had to validate my Blackness a lot,
yeah,
whether or not it was forced on me or whether or not I felt like I had to. Probably both of those things are at play at the same time. But I become more of a militant person because I feel like, whether it's overperforming or whatever, I'm going to show you my Blackness so that you don't have to ask me at all what I am, you know. And it was easier for me to be accepted as Black than it was for me to be accepted as mixed when I was growing up, because I grew up around Black people. So you don't want to be the weird one,
right. I
so I'm
think
going to
I
try.
think your community and what you've grown up around and who you've grown up around plays a lot in how you identify with, whatever side or with whatever ethnic group that you're mixed with. I grew up in a Cambodian American community, so I do identify Cambodian American, but I went to high school in a place where everyone was there's a lot of different ethnic groups. There are like Croatian folks, Italian folks,
Yeah.
who I kind of classify them as white folks. And then there were like rich white folks, and then there were some Black folks. There was a lot of like Latinx folks at my school.
Hmm.
And I was one of the like 7 Asian people.
Yeah, right.
you know and it was kind of funny because like we all joined the Mabuhay Club, which was like the Filipino culture club.
But it was like, you could get it.
The president of Mabuhay Club were my friends, you know, and my cousins. So like my cousins that were Cambodian, they were president of Mabuhay Club at San Pedro High School before I went there. And then my friends that were running it when I got there, they're half black, half Japanese.
Oh, they're like me? I don't know.
Yes.
And they were in charge
and they're out there. Yeah, right. Oh, exactly. So while we didn't have, it was more of like an Asian hangout club where we could all just be Asian, and not feel like judged, and we could all talk about, you know, quote unquote, the weird fruit that we all like and the food things that we all liked.
Or looking at white people like, what do you mean you don't eat rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Like,
exactly.
It's a staple. You should eat it.
Like, you fools, do you not know? It's freaking good. Soy sauce, man. And you got to get the right kind of soy sauce, too.
Yeah, don't do it. For sure. That's funny. So I know we got to wrap up because you got to get back to the protests and everything like that. But before we go, and I need to have you back, so just plan on that already.
Sounds good.
Before we go, what I do like to do is ask all of my guests, because sometimes we do talk a lot about trauma, or we talk about isolation and misunderstanding, and I'd like to end on a positive note. What do you enjoy the most or love the most about being a multiracial person?
There's so many things that I enjoy about being mixed, but I think one of the biggest things that I get to enjoy is being able to share a really unique experience with people that can connect cross-culturally, right? So like, you don't have to be mixed Cambodian to know what I'm talking about when I talk about you know, my experiences growing up. I think that as mixed people, we all can connect with this idea of, you know, having been misinterpreted based on what we look like I said earlier. But, you know, more than that, I feel so lucky to be Cambodian American and mixed race Cambodian American at that, because I'm connected with so many different legacies of peoples and so many different kinds of stories and histories. On my Cambodian side, I'm connected with my mother and her family and her, you know, her story through the Cambodian genocide. But then on my dad's side, I'm connected with my really wonderful white grandparents who were both educators in Torrance and the LA, like San Pedro school district. They were both elementary school teachers. You know, they were civil rights activists. My grandpa used to joke about them having, you know, the FBI having a file on him because he was so vocal about racial injustice. And, you know, he was a real estate agent for a while, and I think the story is that he got his license revoked because he sold a house to a black family in a white neighborhood.
And he got his license revoked?
Yeah, there was some kind of uprising, and I can't remember the exact story right now, but that's what, you know, those are the kinds of histories that I get to be attached to. Right. So I'm so lucky that on both sides, you know, while there is crappy stuff on both sides, right? Sure. I have so many different histories that I can attach myself to, and feel more connected to the world. And I think my mixedness has given me this really amazing power of empathy and being able to connect with people, you know. So yeah, I think being mixed is a huge blessing.
I agree. I'm so glad you said the bit about empathy, because I have been trying to express this to people, and I think mixed people get it. And I'm not trying to say we're more empathetic, but I think because we are like genetically predisposed to code switching, because we have different cultures and things like that, and because we have to see people different, you know, we have to see different people in our own household. We're trained throughout our lives to be more open and more thoughtful. I mean, I'm thinking for me. I'll say it for me. But I appreciate hearing that from you. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I'm really excited that Morgan joined us together on this planet
Yes,
now.
she's the best.
I wish you all the positive things and vibes that I can for the continuing strike for the UC wide solidarity, the cola solidarity. And before we get out of here, though, why don't you tell people how they can find you? Because we didn't even get into your music, which people heard at the top of the show and they're going to hear on the way out, but we'll talk about that in a part 2 or something.
Sounds
Tell
good.
everybody how to find you and everything.
Sure. So you guys can find me on all of social media at Tiffany Lytle Music, TiffanyLytle Music. And you can find me at tiffanylytlemusic.com. And I have an EP out called Cambodian Child that you guys can listen to on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere where you can stream music.
Cool. Awesome. Again, thank you so much. And please come back.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me, Charmaine. It was a blast.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah. Have a good one.
You too.
We don't really know how to fight, but we do know how to live and die. We can't control our minds. We must survive. We have seen our families die, and we felt the bones of sacrifice. Feel trauma of our bloodlines. We must survive. We have heard our families died, and we've seen the bones of sacrifice. Feel trauma of our bloodlines. For them we survive. We know our history will thrive in the minds of those who've seen the night. We have faced the genocide, yet we're still alive. Dance for me, sing my songs now. Don't forget that I am the one who has made barriers come down as I sing at my temple of God. We don't really know how to fight, but we do know how to live and die. We can't control our minds. We must survive. We do know how to live and die.
Militantly Mixed is a Main Hustle Media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Charmaine Fury. Music is by David Bogan the One. You can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Militantly Mixed, please go to patreon.com/militantlymixed for monthly sponsorship or paypal.me/militantlymixed for a one-time only donation. And if you like what you hear on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to be your mixed-ass self. Main Hustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.